Hello, everyone in LinkedIn land. I am back with Creative Lifescaping. We had a bit of a hiatus over the summer, and I'm so glad to bring it back with my good friend, Rollis Fontenot III. Rollis is a national speaker, live stream host, author, Forbes Business Council Member, and founder of HR Maximizer Inc., which is why we've invited him today. It's the only subscription-based talent acquisition service of its kind in the US that helps healthcare organizations attract qualified applicants on the hardest to fill jobs, primarily using a proprietary combination of video creation, technology, and a collaborative team approach. He's appeared in Forbes magazine, ASHHRA's Pulse, Locum Life, and other publications. His firm has produced dozens of live shows and hundreds of videos with over 3 million views that has led to thousands of qualified applicants, including clinical and provider roles. He also hosts 2 live weekly shows, I've been on one of his shows. They're fascinating and a great deep dive into healthcare recruiting. Thank you so much for joining us, Rollis.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Oh, we're having sound issues again. Is that me again?
Testing 1, 2. Let's see.
Okay, that might be me again. Hang on. Sorry. So, how's that now?
I'm hearing you great.
I think it's my settings default to a different microphone or something. Anyway, it's all part of the charm, right?
Yeah.
So we were laughing before we came on. Rollis Fontenot, because I wanted to make sure I pronounced your name right, and I called you Rollis Fontenot the nerd instead of Rollis Fontenot the third. But maybe you should be both, is it?
Yes, I am a nerd because when it comes to like tech stuff and all that, I'm kind of a nerd, so when it comes to all that stuff. So I'll embrace it. I love it.
Awesome. Oh, okay. Alexandra says she could hear us both. So it was obviously just me having some tech issues. So embrace it. So let's dive right into it, Rollis. Tell me, because I gave your intro, we know that you own HR Maximizer Inc. What's going on in healthcare recruiting? Like, is there a struggle to fill positions, or what's going on these days, especially after COVID?
Absolutely. So before COVID, before the pandemic, healthcare organizations had distinct shortages and I'm sure you're probably aware of this. Registered nurses was a big thing, physicians, and that really kind of helped the nurse practitioners and the physician assistants to get that much more, pub, if you will, more jobs and things coming out to fit them because there was a shortage of physicians. And there was also a shortage of LVNs. So those were there for many, many years. But what the pandemic did that changed is it exacerbated some of those shortages. And in addition to that, frontline positions that were easy to get filled, like folks who check folks in when they first come into the hospital, EVS, the cleaning folks. I mean, all these other things that used to be fairly easy fills became difficult because people couldn't necessarily go to work. They might put family members at risk, maybe put themselves at risk with their own health issues and things of that nature. So they were putting themselves at risk for a job that doesn't necessarily pay as much as some other jobs paid now, because you had other jobs that were paying more because they were competing for the same talent. So these entry level positions, I think, was a thing that really hurt a lot of the organizations, in addition to the fact that it exacerbated some shortages that were already there on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also a universal issue. We're seeing that across other industries as well. Like, entry-level positions are hard to find and hard to fill. And it's even worse during a pandemic when we need those people to provide healthcare. And as you know, I'm in Canada, so our healthcare healthcare system is a bit different, but we still have these same problems. Like, things are, routine procedures or so-called routine procedures, which could be like a very important surgery or delayed, which can really affect people's quality of life. So it's great that you're helping people fill those positions. But I was curious, because if we look at your bio, you didn't start in healthcare. How did you go from, I love, that Steve Jobs quote that's, you can't connect the dots going forward, only backwards.
Oh, I haven't heard that. I like that quote, though.
Yes, that's one. I don't love Steve Jobs from what I've read about him, but I love that quote because I'm so curious about the dots. So if I go back into your bio, you started as a financial planner. So tell me a little bit about how you came to HR recruiting for healthcare.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's an interesting question. So I got involved with financial services and was enjoying that. But then we had for those who've been around in the workforce long enough, you know about the tech bust back in the to around 2000 till about 2004. And now, of course, the market's fully recovered beyond that many times. But back then, it was a pretty big deal because the Dow, I think it had peaked around 11,000, and at the time that I left, the business was probably around 7,000. So we had some folks that put some capital to work, and they had some tremendous losses. The Nasdaq was up around 5,000. It went down as low as like 1,000. It was just really bad. So my wife, you know, of course, I was paid based on assets under management. So as I was bringing money in, it was being devalued. So my wife was like, you know what, you might want to look at some other career options here. It's not really working out for us here. I was like, yeah, you have a point. Yeah, let me look and see what else is out there. And I was able to come across this job, and I was able to work for a company that allowed me to recruit, and they recruited anesthesiologists. Got a chance to work for a lady named Misty Coffin, who I still to this day, I'm actually in touch with her from time to time. But anyway, she trained me in that business, and I haven't looked back since. It's been a nice career trajectory change that has led me to where I am now.
Yeah, I love that. So, you know, some people would call, and obviously we're on the creative lifescaping show. So a lot of what I talk about comes back to creativity. And it sounds like what you're talking about is the constraints that forced you to be a little creative and find a new avenue for your skill set. We got a few people joining us. We got Alexandra and Denise from Hockley, Texas, and Mohammed Khalid is posted. I think he's, you know, one of the things I should say to the audience that Rollis let me know, because Rollis is like the streaming guru. He knows all about it. So we're streaming on both of our profiles. So if you make a comment and I don't get to it or we don't see it, make sure we'll get back to it after the show and make sure we connect with you. It's just that it splits the chat a little bit. So if I don't see your comment, please keep that in mind. I'm not ignoring you. So with that creativity that you are obviously able to pivot and change, when you were a kid, like, was there something you did that was particularly creative that you think?
Creative. Wow. It's something that I've always it's been part of me. It's hard in terms of coming up with just new ideas. And it even comes naturally to me now, so much so that I have a team around me that helps me to kind of vet through some of those ideas. Hey, no pun intended. Sorry, I'm talking to a vet. I'm talking about vetting through. Anyway, it's something that's kind of always been with me, just coming up with new and different ideas. Some of the ideas are really good. Some of the ideas are terrible. That's just thinking about an idea person, always coming up with new ones. And, you know, you have to figure out and kind of pick and choose which ones you're going to actually pursue. So when I was in school, one of the things that I like to do, I liked entrepreneurship. And so my dad had bought a Tandy 1000. This is like back in the mid 1980s, right? And it was a big deal to have a
calculator or a computer?
It was a computer, right? Oh, okay. It was a computer. It was a desktop computer. In my town where I grew up in Orange, Texas, no one else that I knew of had a computer, right? So I was like one of the few that had a computer. And so he also bought a printer. And so what I would do is I would take that printer and I would type, you know, a person's name and sell that little piece of paper with that person's name on it. I want to say it was like 10 cents or 25 cents. And I don't know if I was making money. It might have cost my dad more in ink and paper than I was getting in money. But it was just my first stab at my first shot at entrepreneurship. And it was something I thought was kind of creative because no one else in my school was doing something like this.
I love that. That's so creative. You know, and was it the printer with like the little things you had to peel the side with the dot matrix?
Yeah, the dot matrix printer was the first one we got. Of course, it could only print one color, just black. That's it. And then, of course, now what I would do to get creative is I would get different color paper. Oh. So, you know, maybe it's a you know, I don't know, blue paper or pink paper or something like that. And then we would print on different colors paper, and then I would sell those, and they would be able to put in a pre-order, you know, what they wanted to have on their sheet. And then I would go home, print it out, you know, bring it back, and they would pay me for the printout.
It was the first stab at personalization. You know, now you can get those like books with your kid's name in and stuff. And exactly. You're already on it in the 80s. I love that. That is entrepreneurial and creative. Yeah. Hey, we've got Farah. I don't know if I'm saying her name right. Farah Laurent on the show. Hey, thanks for joining.
Hey, Farah.
Yeah. So that is so funny about being creative. So when you think about creativity, if someone were to ask you, for instance, like I did, are you creative? Do you think everybody has it, or do you think that's something unique to certain individuals?
I'm a layman here, so you would probably be better at this than I would. But just for my own thought process, is I think everybody has it. It's just a matter of it's like a muscle you would exercise. So, in fact, the first time my wife introduced me to Pilates, right? So I'm doing Pilates for the first time, and I'm working things out, through the exercise that she's showing me. And I'm not thinking it's working me out that much. It wasn't until afterwards, maybe a day and a half later, I felt some muscles I didn't even know I had. It was like, whoa, wait a second. But the reason why I'm feeling those muscles and the reason why I'm feeling that soreness is because I was working out some muscles that just didn't get a workout on a continual basis. And so I think creativity is like that. If you're not really exercising that muscle, so to speak, you maybe even forget that it's even there, like I did with some of my muscles that I still can't name to you, but I felt them right after I had the session. So I think it's like that. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
You know what? I think that's can I steal that story, your Pilates story?
Sure, go ahead.
I totally agree with you. I think everybody has a capacity to be creative. I think a lot of people, especially in industries like healthcare or science or IT or something where we're trained to use a more of an analytical mind, I think we've kind of lost that muscle. And I love that idea of muscles you didn't know you had, because they've always been there. It's just you've overcompensated by using other muscles and gotten into habits where you haven't, one muscle is bigger than the other. So I think that's a fantastic analogy. I'm going to steal it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Amika, I hope I'm saying that right, says, I agree, everyone has creativity. Some are great at different things. And, that's one of my philosophies, is that everybody is creative. It doesn't mean art. And that's the problem with creativity. I think people think it means artistic, but creativity is using a different color printer paper when you're selling kids' names, at school. Creativity is building a different pivot table, or creativity is building a different healthcare system to recruit, front level employees. So I would love to know. So I'm guessing, Rollis, maybe some of your clients are not necessarily the most creative. Would that be fair? Or they think they're not creative?
Well, they were like me with that Pilates situation. They haven't been exercising that muscle recently. And maybe it's because some of the culture, that's just the way some of these companies are set up. Even if you got a really great idea, it may take years for them to implement it. It's just the case. And so after a while, a person kind of gets tired of that and they just kind of turn that muscle off. They don't use it anymore. I think I think they're creative people, but, in terms of at their core, and they've got some great ideas, but they may not have the full flexibility to really show those. Now at our company, we're kind of small, so it gives us an opportunity. It's kind of a boutique sized company. It gives us an opportunity to really expand our creativity and do different things.
Mm-hmm.
So we may be able to do some things that maybe they had on their mind, they thought about doing in the past, but weren't able to do it because they had some constraints with maybe some of the policies and procedures and resources and all that kind of good stuff. So hopefully that answers your question. I think that they are creative. It's just that we're able to express ours a little bit better because we're a small company, and so they love linking up with us. We almost become like their little R&D. It's like for the HR department, we're like their little R&D. That, okay, let's try this, let's try that, let's see if this works. They can do it through us, where maybe on their own they may not have had that same capability.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because I know sometimes when I speak in healthcare, one of the concerns is that creativity means chaos. It means going against some regulatory requirements, being maverick, which is obviously not the case, because creativity loves constraints. And I love this point about you're having a small company. So it's, instead of moving a battleship, you're more like a little sailboat, where you can kind of get into places the battleship can't get into, maybe, which is that fair? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
how do you take people on that journey? So say someone reaches out to you from a hospital or somewhere, and they can't fill some positions, and they come to you, and they're probably coming to you because you're a small company, you've got results. How do they respond to your approach if they don't know what it is, like using video? And how do you get them over that, like, that's not the way we usually do it, and on board with kind of a different way, a different approach?
I mean, it takes a couple of things. It may be a combination of both these on the part of the organization. someone who's innovative and willing to take some chances is one of them. The other one is, for lack of a better term, they're just at the point now where we're like, we got to find some answers because we're desperate here. We've tried everything else. Now, everything else hasn't worked. So let's just see if what you guys can do can work for us.
So they're desperate. They're a little bit desperate, kind of like you were when the market crashed and you needed a new job.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes it gets down to that. And by the way, I see Gwen's comment. Good to see you, Gwen, and also Amika. She says that culture definitely influences how leaders and associates show up and deliver. I agree. Mm-hmm. We've come across some organizations where the creativity is more there because they feel more comfortable in their position. They feel more comfortable where they are. And you see that creativity come out. But if you have someone who is, there's desperation there, there's not really that full capability to be themselves and to have that creativity, it definitely stifles, I think, the process to a point to where it's a little bit more cookie cutter. I think what part of what we do, and I think this is with any time you have a consultant or a coach like yourself or others, I think sometimes they help to build confidence, right? Because they may have certain ideas that they want to share. They may not have had enough confidence to bring it up to their superior, their boss, or whoever you want to call it, in their organization, but they're okay with bringing it to us because there's trust there. And then we're encouraging, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. We could do this and we could do that. And it kind of builds and becomes an awesome idea. And it builds enough confidence, or they do feel the confidence to go back to that manager, that frontline leader, that the director, whoever it is they're going to speak to. And it's more likely to get approved because they got the confidence level. We also give them some data to help back up what they're wanting to do, that this is a good decision. I think that helps inspire some of the leaders that we work with. So in that way, I think it's been very beneficial also.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point that you and Gwen brought up, and that's the psychological safety, and in cultures where people are punished for mistakes and not encouraged to try different things within the constraints of the regulatory and safety requirements, it can be very difficult. And that's what I see. And your example of bringing someone on board and allowing them to use their creativity, it's kind of like you're their little guide on the side, like they can kind of blame you in some ways, but then you also have the knowledge and the skill to kind of communicate their vision to their superiors, or their manager. So I think it sounds like a great way to help people feel more confident to be creative. So can you give me sorry?
No, absolutely. I agree 100%. Uh-huh.
So give me an example of maybe what would typically happen, the process if someone contacted you, and then give me a story as generic as you need to of like how one particular listing went really popular and you filled it quickly, maybe.
Okay, so I'm a little bit inspired here by Amika's comment. She talks about how everyone has creativity, but some are great at different things. We found that with some folks, they come to the table with a specific idea in mind, and it's maybe something we haven't tried yet, but we're like, what, that makes sense. We like that, So we have a different, like, for instance, I'll give one example. We had one where they had some people who were not excited to be on camera. And so what kind of came from the client is, can we do it together? Can we have like another person with me, right? And so they felt more comfortable. And that came from clients. We didn't come up with that on our own. So we end up having two people. So you'll see, if you watch some of our videos, not a lot of them, you're going to see two people in the video where they're kind of bouncing off of each other, and that made them feel more comfortable. So that was just an idea that came from really a client that they wanted to do it together. That's kind of more of a tactical thing, right? But the more of a strategic thing would be things like, hey, you know what, let's try something where after they apply, let's have something where we have a message for that. Or perhaps let's have a follow-up video for someone who's seen another video. Let's have another video after that kind of seems to be, almost not like a sequel, but just basically more in depth in the conversation. And so that's something that's kind of evolved through time and working with clients. So if I was to think about it, there's probably a lot of things I can think about that where those ideas actually came from just interactions, with the client. Oh, okay, I got another one for you.
Yeah.
So we would have videos, and then we would have people apply, go to the website to perhaps apply for the video, but it was just too long of a process. Because some of these applications take forever. Mm-hmm. So the idea we had is, let's just create a quick little page where they just quickly upload their information. Maybe it's just a resume. Maybe they type in a few things about themselves, name, address, phone number, and that's their application. Okay. So we made it like 3 minutes to make it really, really easy and quick. And that was a great thing that we use to this day. Whenever we're doing screening for clients, we don't just create the videos. We also create an experience. So once they hit that button to click on that link, they're able to experience a little bit more about that page, see more videos, see a quick application, and they're able to get going. So that's another thing where a lot of these ideas what we do, a lot of things you see us do in our videos, these weren't things that we had at the very beginning. They just kind of came through time, being creative, trying different new things, and then we keep doing what's working, and then we stop doing what didn't work.
Well, yeah, and I love that. And I think what sets you apart, and I just hit here, we've got your website here if anyone's interested in checking out the videos that Rollis has on his company site or connecting with him. The website's down here, hrmaximizer.com. And for anybody who's joining late, I'm joining with Rollis Fontenot III, not the nerd, but also the nerd. And we're talking about recruiting in healthcare and how you can be creative to try to fill positions across any industry. And Rollis was just talking about the process of people connecting with him. And I think, and listening to the client and taking those ideas. And I think what that tells me is you're using one of the foundational aspects of creativity, which is curiosity. You know, like there's people who get competent in their jobs. We see it all the time. And they think they know everything. And they're like, that's not the way we do it. That'll never work. You know, how many people have heard that from, you know, employers or colleagues? Like, we've tried that before. I hear this all the time. We've tried that before. It didn't work. Well, maybe we didn't try it right. And how are we? And that's one thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about too, is how are we assessing that? Like in veterinary medicine, I have friends who own clinics, and one particular friend had said, we tried door knockers once and it didn't work. And I said, well, how do you know it didn't work? Well, when we asked people how they found us, they said, like Google or something. And I said, but how do you know they didn't know to Google you from the door knocker? Like, you know, it's like veterinarians are very smart people, but they take that knowledge and they add those assumptions to a different industry in a different field. And they don't, like, you would never use a medicine on a cat that never has been used in a cat before, or that never has been worked. You know, why are you doing that the same for your marketing? So right. I guess right. So my long rambling story is to say, like, how then do you add, you talked about data briefly when you're talking about kind of giving ideas to management. How do you assess the idea of, let's say, 2 people, or is that more or less effective than one? Like, how do you collect the data and show that things are working?
I'm so glad you mentioned this. This is great. So and remind me if I don't finish this point, because I tend to kind of jump around.
Me too.
But, you know, in marketing, you have what you call A/B testing. So I want to come back to that. But before I go to the A/B testing, I want to just mention this. People have said that, okay, we've tried video before. Okay, great. So tell me about it. I want to know more. Like you said, curiosity. I want to know more. And where we end up getting to is that they may have created a video a few years ago. It was 1 video, maybe it was 2. I look at the video and I'm like, okay, I see why it didn't work. Okay. So sometimes you can say that I checked the box and I did this, I did X, but you may not have done it in the way it should have been done, because that is a big difference. But right, it's not just the fact that you actually did it, but did you do it in the way that was effective for your audience? Mm-hmm. So was the video too long? Was it talking about stuff that actually was relevant to your potential candidate, or was it something that they wouldn't even be interested in anyway? Are you showing things that the candidate wants to see? How many of these videos did you make? How long did you do it? Where did you push the videos out to where they could be seen by your potential audience? These are all questions that come from, like you said, curiosity, asking those questions. And what we find in a lot of cases is they did enough things that weren't correct. I shouldn't say weren't correct, but there's some stuff that we practically tried and wasn't correct. So we quit doing it, right? Because we look at the data. And it's not that videos don't work. It's just that maybe you just didn't do them in the right way that's going to be effective for your audience. So I think you could take that one thought that you mentioned and you can apply it in a lot of different ways. And there's different ways you can test it. Some ways are more difficult than others to really, really test, like for the door knockers. You know, we know this intuitively. We know that we generally don't make a decision on the spot the first time we're introduced to something. Mm-hmm. So it may have been that they were exposed to the door knocker first, Then they saw that next thing. Maybe they saw a billboard. I don't know. Maybe they went to a clinic. Well, whatever the case is, they may have had more than one interaction. Maybe even passing by the business and seeing the sign.
Yeah.
A number of those different things may have added up to them finally taking notice and using the service. Maybe the last thing they did was a Google.com search, but it may have been 5 or 6 or 7 or maybe 10 interactions before they actually made that buying decision. So we know that. In fact, we actually were able to track the data for videos. It usually takes 2 or more videos for them to take a buying action. So if I created one video, I've automatically lost at least 50% of my audience by only making one video. The second I make 2, I'm increasing my chances. So to your point, it may have been that you just don't have a good way of tracking all the different ways of what you're doing and how they're being responded to. It's kind of a long answer, but.
No, it's a perfect answer. And I think that comes to another point that you made is when people hire, so some people might say, well, I can do my own video. Why am I hiring someone to help me do a video? But you're not hiring, is that the Picasso when he does a sketch of someone on the street. And she's like, can I buy that from you? You said, yes, $10,000. He's like, and she says, that's ridiculous. It took you 10 seconds. He's like, no, it took me 40 years. Right. So that's because I think you've gotten to the place where you've collected the data and you probably also have a sense for what works, like intuitively based on data that you've accumulated over the years. And that's because you've been willing to fail, right? You've tried these things. A client comes to you and says, let's do 2 people. You're like, sure, let's give it a try. But if that position doesn't get filled, it's not because that video or 2 people necessarily failed. And that's why doing over and over and over again and collecting that data is so important. Is that right?
Absolutely. We're still making mistakes. It's not like we're geniuses and we figured it all out, right? So we're still stumbling forward, if you will. But a lot of the basic stuff we're not going to get wrong because we've already been there. We already got the T-shirt, as they say.
Right,
so we don't have to keep making those same mistakes. But we still get great ideas from clients as we collaborate. I think that the sum is not equal to it's not equal to the sum of its parts, right? So in other words, we're able to accomplish more together. 1 + 1 doesn't just equal 2; it might equal 3 or 4 or 5 because we're able to kind of really synergize and figure out some ways that we can do things a little bit better. And so with that being said, I think that it's helped us along the way to make less of those rookie mistakes, so to speak, so where we can start out from the gate with the best chance possible of success. Because we've made those 2, 3, 4 minute videos. We've done that. We know that that's not effective anymore for an initial ad, right? If someone's looking at an ad, they're about to watch some TV show or something on YouTube, or they're about to do something on the internet, or they're about to watch that next video on TikTok. We get it. We know that they're not going to want to sit and watch a 5-minute video of us talking about a job, right?
Yeah.
So it's got to be shorter. So those are things that we figure out through time so that we don't have to keep making, let's try this new 5-minute video. Maybe before
videos don't work. We've done 25 5-minute videos and none of them have worked.
Exactly. So I will say this: at some point, a 5-minute video will work, but you have to have Kevin Hart coming in The Rock or something like that. Maybe you got to have some cars blow up or something like that, and then maybe you could do a 5-minute video. But at this point, for what we're doing, which is recruiting, we're typically going to keep between 30 seconds to a minute. We know that tends to work better than any other time frame so far. That's just one small example of, it's not that we're geniuses, it's just that we've done enough times. We don't have to make the same mistake over and over again.
Well, and that's how creative genius happens. I mean, you don't get someone like Michelangelo or some famous sculptor that just starts sculpting. It takes years of learning that the practice of like how hard to hit the hammer, like that's all important parts of creativity, which is what you're talking about. And people don't often think that that's part of the creative process because it's learning and data and information, but that's half of creativity. I mean, people say kids in kindergarten are really creative. Well, maybe they can think of a way to get like a unicorn to the moon, but a way to like a new suture pattern or, some other type of device for a surgical technique, like they're not going to come up with a great idea for that. So I wanted to come to a couple of these comments from Mika. And she says she agrees that, she thinks leaders need to learn ways to encourage staff and allow them to feel comfortable and confident to voice their concerns. And Shaniqua also agrees with that, says when staff feel like they're appreciated and their voice is heard, they are going to enjoy doing their job and it's going to show, which I think, I would guess shows in the video as well.
Yeah, yeah. And here's the thing that's kind of cool about the videos in particular. And again, I'm not trying to just be a video sales guy, but I'm just telling you that what has happened that we didn't know was going to happen. This is where creativity, I think, comes into play. Whenever you do ideas that you would not have normally done, you get exposed to something else that you would not have been exposed to had you not at least followed through on that idea, right? And so one of the things that's come out of this is that it gives an opportunity for the employee or for the leader to talk about why they feel the organization is great, why they feel it's a good place to work. And as they're talking about this is the way that their voice is actually being heard, because not only are we hearing it from them, we're actually recording it, we're documenting it, and we're going to play that video thousands and thousands of times. It's really, really great for that person. It also helps that person say, you know what, these are some reasons why I like working here, and maybe I should stay here a little bit longer versus taking that next call right from that recruiter who comes in or seeing that next job ad that comes through. So I think it also, in some cases, because we find that when we go back and do further shoots in the future, we find a lot of those same people still work there.
Wow.
Because these are the people who said that this is why I like working here. I love working here because, and they're going through that. So I think that it's I haven't been able to fully test the data on this, but I would imagine if we looked at the retention ratio of people who are on these videos and talking about why they enjoy the job versus those who've never been on a video, never talked about it, I'm going to venture to say that those people end up staying longer. And it goes back into something Robert Cialdini wrote about in his book called Influence. And he talked about how we like to be consistent. So if I say something today on this show, it's kind of hard for me after the show is over not to kind of follow through with that same thought process. So if I'm talking about how great the company is, it's kind of hard for me the next month to put in my notice, right? Unless something really, really bad happened. So I think that sometimes you'll find some unintended consequences that are positive whenever you follow through with a creative idea. Even if that creative idea isn't a success, you may end up learning from it to help you do something else that's great.
Yes, I love that concept of like in creativity, especially in the divergent stage where we're like brainstorming, essentially, there's no bad ideas, but we all know there's bad ideas.
Yes.
But the bad ideas, we need them. They're like the price we pay for creative success and for success in the future. And that leads me to a question, because Rollis, obviously you're the type of person who is curious and is willing to take some risks and willing to like follow your nose, so to speak. How do you get through that barrier? Either your client says, I don't know, that's a bit out there, or I'm not really sure about that, or your own internal, maybe inner critic that says, oh, like, is this something we should really do? What's your process, your personal process when you are trying something new that helps you move through that? Most of us have this kind of fear of judgment or inner critic that kind of try to dissuades us from doing things that are new.
Yeah, I know, and I'm going to be fully aware and cognizant of the fact that people are going to process these ideas differently. The way that I share it, it may not be the right thing for everybody else. The way that I tend to work through ideas is when I think of an idea, the first thing I'll do generally is I'll document it on my phone. And I have a notes thing that has just, it's called ideas, and it's like show ideas or business ideas. And I'm typing those in. If I don't feel like I'm in a position to type it, I may recite it into a transcription kind of thing. I use otter.ai. There's probably others. I think Google Sheets, Google Docs even does it. But basically, I'm just talking my idea into my phone, and it's typing it out. So that the thought process for that is this something that I want to come back to later? Because there's lots of things I don't ever actually pursue. But it does give me an opportunity to have a conversation. So I might come back to you and say, hey, Caroline, I had this idea. I was thinking about doing such and such and such and such. And then maybe you might ask a question, a follow-up question that I never thought about. It's like, well, what do you do with this? Or how are you going to do that? I'm like, well, I hadn't thought about that yet, And then I may come up with a quick answer, or I may come up, let me get back to you on that. Let me do some more research. So I think that if you got someone who you trust, who you don't mind kind of bouncing things off of, I think it's incredibly effective. For me, I have the benefit of a team. We have a great team, and I actually moved over from the president role over to the founder role. So I'm kind of more on the idea side. I'm kind of like talking things through, but I'm speaking to a person who's going to implement it or not implement it or ask questions. So in the case
wonderful.
Yeah.
How do I get one of those?
It took a while. I mean, it took a while. She's awesome. Her name is Leah. She runs our company. She's our president. And then we also have other folks on our team, on our operations team, that also help me vet through ideas. So like Marissa, she helps me vet through ideas. So anyway, I come up with these ideas, I bring them up, and then they'll ask questions about it. They'll tell me how they feel about it, and then some of them we implement, some of them we don't. I think someone who comes up with a lot of ideas, don't get too so caught up in your one or two ideas. Get used to making a lot of them, and some of them are going to be very good. Some of them are not going to be so good. There's been times I've come up with an idea and talk with someone, and based on the questions they're asking, I'm like, I decided it wasn't a good idea anymore. Like, well, this idea is not very good based on based on the feedback I'm getting. So for me, that's a mechanism I use, is bouncing it first, documenting it, and the second of all, bouncing it off someone.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think what I'm hearing also is that you're not afraid of a volume of ideas. Like you talked about that muscle in Pilates before, like you need to practice it. And what I think, where I see, and this is my perception, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're also using that muscle of generating and documenting an idea all the time. So if one is a bad idea, like no big deal, you have 20 other ideas. So it takes the pressure off of the one idea. If you're only capturing one idea a month, then there's a lot of pressure on that idea. If you're capturing 40 ideas a month, then what I perceive and I see about you, Rollis, is you don't have a big ego. Like there's not a big ego around like, oh, this turned out to be a bad idea. I'm not going to have ideas anymore. It sounds like you just keep doing it, and you don't have a lot of pressure on yourself if an idea doesn't work. And you make sure that you surround yourself with people who can actually tell you like if it's good or bad idea. Would that be fair, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that sometimes it's not that the idea also it wasn't good. It just needs to be tweaked. And sometimes when people ask those questions, like, oh yeah, you know what, that's true. Maybe I shouldn't do it that way. Maybe I should do it this way. So maybe the idea just needs to be tweaked, or some ideas just need to be totally just scrapped and just let's go back to the drawing board. But I think the volume of ideas is important. I think that some folks feel so beaten down at some of these companies that they've just shut the idea machine off. And they may not have come up with an idea in like years because we only do it this way. They're not really interested in changing it, and so we're just going to just do it this way. And so some of them get so tired. It's kind of going to this whole quiet quitting thing, right? Where they're okay, you know what? I got to go for my next gig, whatever that is. So let me start making preparations for that. And maybe that's doing something part-time in the evenings to start up their own business. Maybe it's applying for other jobs. Those are like symptoms of the bigger issues, that they feel like their creativity has been stifled. They don't feel like their voice is being heard. And so I do feel like my voice is heard. I have a team. I'm able to express those ideas. Some of them are good. Some of them aren't. Some of them need tweaking. And I think it's important, Caroline, for each person to have their own team. Even if you don't have the capability to hire and employ someone, have someone you can bounce some things off of. I think that's so important with creativity. That's just personally how I feel.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. And I think that comes out in the data. Some people like to create in groups. Some people like to create solo, but the practice of creativity is a collaborative approach. So even if you come up with the idea solo, having someone that you can communicate with that and kind of think it through is really important. So, so also one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is, I know that you focus mostly on healthcare in the US. I'm a veterinarian. I am so tired of seeing the same ad. We are looking for a vet. We're a 3-doctor practice, blah, 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 blah. Competitive salary. So if you were starting from scratch, like you were saying, some of these people have tried video, what would you say to either veterinarians or other industries who are curious about trying a new approach to recruiting? What's kind of the low-hanging fruit, would you say?
I think the lowest hanging fruit would be if I had basically zero budget and I wanted to just start doing some videos. I would take some of my best employees that I have and ask them, what makes you stay here? What is it about our company? What is it about our culture that makes you stay here, first of all? And what is it that you like about your job? Tell me about your typical day on your job. And I'm documenting all of this. And I think you're going to get a fair amount of good clips out of that. And that's what you want to put with your job posting. I mean, to me, it would be more about that than what you need. People don't necessarily care about what you need if they don't know you. I mean, some people are, but I mean, it's going to be things that they would have to be passionate about, right? So if you're saying we need this, let's say I have a charitable organization, I'm saying that we do this and that for the community, and so we need that, then yeah, they're more likely to want to do that. But in the scope of business, in the scope of projecting an ad for a business to work for them, you're going to want to come about what are some things that benefit your audience, which is whoever you're trying to recruit. So if I'm talking about veterinarians, I would want to be talking to some of my veterinarians that work for let's say if I have a company and I have veterinarians that work for us, I'd want to talk to those veterinarians. What is it that makes you want to stay here, Dr. Brookfield? What is it that jazzes you about working at our company? Tell me about what it was that made our company stand out, that made you want to work for us versus the other companies that you saw. I know you get calls from recruiters. I know you get emails. What makes you stay here and not actually take those calls? Those are the kind of questions I'll be asking. And what comes out of that is what your company's competitive advantage is. Some people say, well, we have competitive salary. Well, do you really? Do you really know what the other companies are offering? Is it really competitive? Oh, we have great benefits. Oh, compared to what? Like, have you really checked the other benefits of the other companies? And so, but asking the actual employees, I think helps a lot. And it goes back to what was mentioned earlier in the comments, is making sure that people feel heard. And so if you're doing that, if you are truly curious, you're going to get some great content out of those videos. Hey, Philip.
Yeah, Philip says if employees are generally positive, it says loads about the company. And I think I don't know if you've come across this with any of your clients, but what comes to mind for me is they don't want to know. They're terrified of asking because they don't want to know the answer, because this is not work that they're continually doing. They're slapped in the face with the position that they need. I don't know if you've seen this in your work, and they don't want to ask their employees because they're afraid that their employees are going to say, actually, I've got one foot out the door. What do you think about that?
Yeah. It's actually a good opportunity though for you to learn. Like, what are they going to? If they're leaving your organization, what is it that they're going to? Because you have to think about this. Whenever you're making any type of job offer, any type of business transaction, there's what they call in the legal world. It's my favorite term in the legal world. It's called consideration. So they have to have something that they get out of it. And then of course you're going to have something that you're going to want to get out of it. If what you're offering isn't better than what they have already, why would they make a move?
Right.
So you've got to come up with something that's going to appeal to them, that would make them want to make that move, right? What's their consideration? What's in it for them to make that move? We realize it's going to help you to have more veterinarians that work for your organization. We see how that helps you, but how does it help the veterinarian? Is it better than what the veterinarian is experiencing at their current place of employment? And by the way, it doesn't always have to be money. It can be a situation of, is there career progression involved? Is it a place where their voice will actually be heard, where their ideas will be implemented, where they can do some cool, innovative things to help the animals, which may be important to that particular veterinarian, right? Whereas maybe another veterinarian, maybe their process is a little bit different. They don't want to progress in their career, but maybe something like having a great work-life balance and flexibility is important to them. So I think you have to kind of find out, first of all, what's keeping your staff there, the folks you want to bring more of them like them on board. What is it that's attracting or keeping them there? That, I think, to me, is going to be step one to finding out what's going to attract someone else to come there, and then build off of that.
Yeah, so it sounds like doing some deep work about your culture versus like door knockers or 5-minute videos or whatever the case may be. Like, sounds like that you're saying that's not super effective if you don't know what your competitive advantage is and what your target audience really wants.
Yeah, sometimes there is an assumption that more exposure to my job will create more applicants, but that may not be the case. What are you exposing them to? If you're exposing them that the fact that you've got some great things that they're not getting where they are, that's a really different story. But if you're just exposing them to another job where they already have a job, I mean, that's not really going to be that attractive to them. So you're still going to be hearing crickets when it comes to the post and pray, putting your jobs out there. Exposure doesn't necessarily equal results, right? It has to be I like what Zig Ziglar used to say. He said people are always tuned into this radio station. It's WIIFM, which is what's in it for me.
Yes.
So you have to kind of present that first. Then they will be more jazzed about your mission and what the great things you guys are doing and all that. But the first thing you've got to really address is what's in it for that person who's looking at that ad. That's when you're trying to get new customers, where you're trying to get new employees, whatever the case is.
Yeah, what's in it for me? And target, like Rollis has, your deep curiosity and be open to the answer instead of just asking the question just to get the answer you're looking for. And people
Oh
just say, oh,
yeah.
they want to hear this. One of the things, quickly before we start to wrap up here, is I don't know. It's kind of one of those like triggers for me, I guess, on ads in veterinary medicine is we're like a family here. And the joke is, who wants to work with their family? Like, to me, that is the worst thing in an ad. If they're like, we're like a family, I'm like, what? You're going to ask me to work for free, compromise my time, do all the crap work.
No, that's a good one. Okay, so we had that every single company we go to, they all say we're like a family. So what we do is we ask a follow-up question. That's where curiosity comes in play.
Ah,
Okay, so why is it like a family to you? What is it about family that reminds you of this job? So I like to actually just delve in a follow-up question, like how is it like family for you?
mhm.
Because I'll sometimes explain to them in an interview when some people hear the word family, that may be a negative connotation for them. They may have had a horrible family situation.
Yeah.
So I'd like you to explain for me, what do you mean by it's like a family here? And
Mhm.
then let them expound on it. I think that, and that's the clip, that's part of the clip you use. Use the part of the clip with explaining why they think it's a family here. Hey, we do stuff together. I feel like I'm really being heard. I feel like these are my friends here, or whatever the case is.
They've
And
got my
even
back, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
even that though it can be a little bit of a minefield, because if you're not careful, if you have people who are just homogeneous, they all look and talk the same, and they say we're like a family here, we do stuff together, you may be putting a message out that you want to put out there that you're not diverse in your thinking. Everybody has to be the same. So it can be a little bit. So that's why you got to ask these follow questions. Okay, what do you mean by a family? Why is that important to you? What is it? What is it about a family that reminds you of this job, or vice versa? So I
Right.
think
And then
just
what's in it
asking
for
follow.
them? So you'll
Yeah,
attract the people who are like, I want somewhere where my voice is heard and they've got my back and they do social activities and they feel like a cohesive team is different than, we're like a family. So I love
exactly.
that. Well, I'm not going to lie. So for everybody who's joining, I'm speaking with Rollis Fontenot III and the nerd.
Yes, I like to,
You
and fun to know is, and I like to be fun to know, right?
I know. I love that. That made it so much easier for me to. I have like a bit of anxiety about saying people's names, so it made it so much easier. You can find Rollis on LinkedIn, TikTok. I think it was Instagram as well, at Rollis Fontenot. And I am not going to let you off without doing what we traditionally do on every Creative Lifescaping is a truth or dare. And of course, you chose dare. So my dare for you is I would like you to introduce yourself to me, but as your favorite cartoon character, and see if I can guess who it is.
Hmm.
So you have to be like, hi, I'm like a bird who likes to whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. What's up, Doc? I'm Rollis Fontenot.
Bugs Bunny, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Exactly.
good. Awesome. You're such a, you know what, Rollis, you're such a good sport, and I really appreciate your time today. I hope people connect with you. I hope my veterinary colleagues reach out to you to get some help filling those positions that they really are struggling to fill. And thank you for doing my dare and sharing all your wisdom. And the takeaway for me from you, Rollis, really is lead with curiosity. Like, make no assumptions and just go with your curiosity and take what people are telling you, and just the sky's the limit. So do you have anything
Absolutely.
you wanted to tell people before we sign off here?
Whatever you're thinking about doing, don't be afraid to try it and bounce it off some folks that you trust. Don't just do it to anybody. But about who have talk the talk and walk the walk, right? People who have experienced what you're looking to be. But go ahead and try whatever that thing is. And if there's any way I can help, feel free and connect with me. I'm out of connection, so sometimes I have to kind of wait to accept folks as people drop off. But let's follow each other. Feel free and put some stuff on the comments. I'd love to get to know each and every one of you guys. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And then again, if you want to find Rollis's company, it's hrmaximizer.com. Thank you so much, Rollis. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.